Hi, this is Alexcursus, a show where I take a look at some gunpla or figurine and see how authentic they are. This time we'll be looking at the HGUC 12144 RGM-79C GM Type C or GM Modified. The GM Type C is developed in lunar 2 by the Earth Federation Space Force, intended to be the formal model of GM to be adopted. However, the development wasn't going up to speed, and Lunar 2 poured its resources to other more immediately fruitful projects. However, being delayed isn't a bad thing for the GM Type C. It means that Lunar 2 can now pour all of the experience of the 1-year war into the GM Type C. And after it's restructured to become the Space Command, Lunar 2 still want to push the GM Type C to be the new standard for GM. Now I will be rating this kit based on saga, style, action, gimmick, and absence. Style is how closely does the gunpla or figurine resemble their anime, manga, games, or other media's counterparts, or if there are some particular style added to it to improve its perceived realism, making it seem more realistic, or do they stuck out like a sore thumb, making it less authentic? In case of the GM Type C, it is one of Kadoki Hajime's own design. He did a great job translating it into a HGUC format. Hajime's own design or original design is more on the perceived realistic side, and the model kit go for the anime's more simplified, more impressionist look. And I think Kadoki did a good job here. You can see the proportion is definitely very Ver.Ka, as some of you might know, but the sculptures or the segmentations on these kits is definitely very anime-like. Not that they don't have details, but rather sparingly given. Now, some of the details on the GM Type C that would give it a good markings on style is the first one. There is a separate piece behind the visor. I painted it in metallic. Hopefully that you can see behind the reflection. It is compared to the base model GM's reverse sculpts. This way you have more options as the modeler for what you do with it, but they are less visible without some strong lighting. The top camera is a clear part that is actually one piece with the visor, but you can't really see it because it is heavily hooded. Falcon guns are sculpted. These side vents, they don't have a color correct sticker for them, but they are just black, easy enough for me to deal with. And they are separate pieces. The head is still a front back clamshell, and have just as many details as you would expect on a HGUC. The chest looks more like a Gundam chest. That is because the GM Type C is supposed to be closer in performance with Gundam than the base model GM. So that is a good design shorthand on Kadoki's part. The vents are separate pieces, and so as the cockpit hatch. The waist, well, the waist is a separate piece, but it is just a cover for the colors. The skirts are very Gundam-like, although doesn't have the special block on the side, which is fine. The V is supposed to have stickers that we will talk about later, but I like this low vis, or I'm used to the low vis V on the skirts, so take that what you will. And then the side skirts have a docking point, although nothing is really designed to dock on it, but at least aesthetic wise this is great. And then just like base model GM, the clamshell for the thigh have the segment lines on it, so very good. Down to the lower leg, one piece front armor, unlike the base model GM, so that's lovely. No clamshell gap to deal with. And then down to the ankle armor. It is not parted in the middle, but rather parted on the side, so that is easier to hide and easier to fix, which I think is the better way to do multi-piece ankle armor. The foot pretty much the same like the base GM, and still have the thruster sculpted in. Looking from behind, no color separation for the lens at the back, so I have to paint it. And then the antenna is a separate piece. Beam saber, separate piece. Nothing special about the backpack aside from the extra thrusters. And yeah, just the same, pretty much the same as base model GM, but a little bit more, or at least looks, high functioning. Shoulder armor is a clamshell, unlike the base model GM, although that is because there are side apogee motors thrusters and the lifting bars. Again, they don't have stickers or other things provided, but just painted black isn't too hard. And then bicep is a single piece as usual. Left right clamshell for the forearm, but you don't really see it most of the time. And then a hand with trigger finger. We'll talk more about the hands in Gimmick. Back skirts are still just a solid single piece, and then you got thrusters in a separate piece. Back of the leg is where you can see the clamshell. You can kind of see where the front leg armor is, but then it looks natural enough for assembly. At the back, the calves, you can see clear clamshell line, but that is because they make it a segment sculpt. As a straight builder, no comment really. And then, but no clamshell, like no segment line on the rest of the lower leg. The ankle, curiously enough, is a separate piece. Well, not that curious, but I will talk about the engineering later. Let's put it that way. And obviously this GM Type C is in the Earth Command, Earth Department's color of the off-white and the deep blue. In fact, this is supposed to be for the Torrington base, which is the time where we take a look at the stickers. GM Type C come with what is known as decal stickers. They are actually decals with adhesive. So for the V-notch, they do have a cutout for it so that you can kind of fold it, but because how well they stand, you sort of really need to force it. But once you made it work, it will stay there. But like I said before, I'm used to and somewhat liking the low vis V these days. And then you got a lot of EFSF markings, weirdly enough, when in the 0083 the ESSF is observed to be the Space Command or Space Department. But Bandai is less consistent on that front. Not to mention, yeah, I said it, Torrington-based Australia. So this is supposed to be an Air Force GM Type C, but you know that. I don't know if you can see it. The top one is actually a kangaroo in front of Uluru. Very Australian. And yeah, the Federation is still using the Star and Moon anchor at this point. So style-wise, being Kadoki's own design, he knows the design quite well, and he definitely did a great job realizing it into the 1:144 scale. And a lot of the part separations are pretty good. However, there are a few things keeping it from getting an S. Like we have looked at before, there are quite a few places that there are no sticker provided for the color correction, nor was there a parting solutions for them, like the chest vents or the cockpit. Not to mention some of the segmentations are still fairly visible, especially on the back. You can argue that's not very important because most of the time you are looking at the model from the front, and we'll see very soon the forearms would be covered most of the time, so it's not a big problem. I just couldn't honestly give this an S for styling, partly because I feel like I was going too easy on the original GM, and partly because I would put that in a separate video. But let's say I think Kadoki did a good job here, but there are things that are not the kid's own fault, but the way that it is designed that leaves it hard to be very well realized in model form. Before we go into action, I think we should talk about the shield in style because it is in separate colors and the visor is see-through, unlike the Best Mecha collection. And they do have full scopes, just like the standard GM. Action is basically the articulations on the Gunpla or figurine. However, it goes a bit further than just number of joints. It is also how useful are those joints. There are cases where there are joints present but not usable. GM Type C, the head is on a ball joint, just like pretty much everything else, and the neck have a front and back so that you can adjust the angle how GM Type C look. The chests have no ab crunch, that's why I said this piece is separate, but just on just for coloration. There's no movement here, but it does have side-to-side swivel. The front skirt, it is in a one piece in the kit, but they do have a limiter, so you can chop it in half in between the limiters and have independent movement. The side skirts are on a swivel and then a rocker of their own. So quite a lot of opening on the side. And then the leg is on a ball joint, so it can go out to 45 degrees, and that's about it. And then double knee joint, but again the armor is getting in the way, and then the back skirt prevents it to kicking its own ass. The leg or the foot is, or the ankle is on a ball joint from the lower leg, and then you got the and then the foot is actually on a hinge and then have swivel, that you get a little bit of play. All of these together give the GM Type C a very high bunny hop. It's not getting very low. It's a high bunny hop, enough to be expressive, enough for some kicking action, but not great. Let's put it that way. And then the arms can go up, and then it does have a shoulder joint, unlike the base GM, and then double joint the elbow, so it can go very high up. Only the shoulder armor is blocking how far it's going actually. Like without the shoulder armor, it can just flip all the way 180 degrees. Again, talk about the hands in gimmicks, and then no movement on the backpack. So overall, very solid actions on the GM Type C. Obviously, there's some more extreme action that it cannot do, but for most poses, the GM Type C can easily handle. I would give it an A. I mean, the arms are excellent with the double joints and then the shoulder joint and then the almost 90-degree side lift. But yeah, it is better than a base model GM, but it is not better enough to break the barrier into S like Zoc did. So for action, GM Type C gets an A as well. Next is Gimmick. Here again, I need to talk a bit about the engineering. The elbow joints and leg joints on the, well, actually the thigh joint as well, so as the ankle joint, are cast in ABS, which means that they are tougher. They maintain tension over time, unlike regular PS, but unlike polycap, they are a bit more workable. That's why you can see they can mold these joint features on the elbow joint and the leg joint. This is actually great PS, but then the ankles are ABS again. You can see the transmission tubing at the back as well. So ABS enable you to do bigger details, but they are not good at, well, they can hold some fine details, but not as good as PS. That's the good news. They maintain tension, they can have some big features. The bad news is that they are harder to paint. Either you're a straight builder trying to put on panel lining, like I'm doing. I mean, they're doing sort of fine, but they don't get the fade out effects like I can on the regular PS. And if you are a serious modeler, fixing these gaps would be quite a hard work in comparison. And you definitely need to use stronger foundation paints for them. So there's some good, some bad. Not really a bad choice, just the product of the time where Bandai haven't got to be as good as they are today, that they can get away with PS or KPS for a lot of the drawings. So Gimmick, yeah, it does come with this open palm with a waist articulation, so that it is much easier combining with the double jointed elbow for GM Type C to do the beam saber pulling action, but unlike the standard GM, it has no side rocker, so not quite as dramatic as of a pulse. And then the right hand have a very pronounced trigger finger out compared to the standard fist that's just sort of kinda holding on the trigger, but it is a full trigger finger on the GM Type C. Now, GM Type C can do the pull beam saber action, but unfortunately, while this beam saber does have a hole for beam saber blade, the GM Type C does not come with a beam saber blade, so you don't really have that option. Now for the shield we have looked at, the handlebar is now sculpted in as one piece with the shield, so there's no way for GM Type C to hold on to it. And you'll see this weird tab. This tab is for this two-position shield clamp, which you can hold the shield there. So right on the front of the forearm for frontal protection, or on the side for a standard look. There is a joint inside the shield, so you can give it a swivel, but yeah, you have to really hold on to the bracket. GM Type C also get a hyper bazooka on top of the 90mm machine gun, or bullpup machine gun as they are sometimes called. However, both weapons shares the trigger finger hand here, so to swap them you have to open up the hand for them. The hyper bazooka does have a swivel to accommodate different poses. Something I should have mentioned in style that is not that important but still a minor knock in that department is the sticker sheet does not include the lens for the guns, so I have to ping them. They look okay, they look okay, but you know, just something not provided. In addition, while both the 90mm machine gun and the hyper bazooka are magazine fed, their magazines are fixed on this model, not detachable like they should be. Not super, I mean, it is quite a standard for HG to not have detachable magazine, but there are quite a few HG that have detachable magazine, so this is not a favorable situation for the GM Type C. Now the GM Type C comes with quite an assortment of hands, a more spray out open palm, a closed fist for both left and right hand, and then a beam saber holding right hand. This beam saber holding right hand is decidedly not big enough to hold the hyper bazooka or the 90mm machine gun without modification on the weapons. So kinda wild when there's no beam saber blade provided in the kit, and even wilder that they don't give you a left hand beam saber holding hand. And then down here, these tiny pieces. Now these two little pieces are for the slots at pelvis of the GM Type C. You can see the slots. You can put on a cover to close it up, or you can pack in this action base connector. I choose to leave both off because you see this even less than the back of the GM Type C. So gimmick wise, GM Type C have quite a bit of gimmick with articulation left hand so that it is much easier for it to, let's position it. So it is much easier for GM Type C to have a very realistic action pose, holding on its weapons. And the shield have two positions, so that again more action options, and the trigger fingers definitely again make the whole thing feels more real. Beam saber having a beam blade attachment point is definitely a plus. Even though the kit does not have a blade, it's not hard to find another blade, a spare blade for it. There's nothing on the kit to attach to the side skirt attachment point, and I don't remember anything using this size of attachment hole, but it is definitely a good place to start for you to do something. That is again authentic in the law for the GM Type C. However, without the beam saber blade, without the detachable magazines, and without a left hand that can hold on to any weapons, because they're all open palm or closed fists, despite there are a lot of extra fist options for the GM Type C, I have to keep the gimmick of GM Type C to a A, because again, not quite absolutely everything you want for a GM Type C is in the kit. Finally, absence. I think in part of Gimmick, I have made very clear what is clearly missing on the GM Type C. The lack of a beam saber blade or a single piece beam saber with the blade activated, the lack of the detachable magazines, the lack of a left hand that can hold any weapons by itself, and then the lack of, I can't really take marks of the lack of a shield handle. It's here. It's not operable, so not a great gimmick, but it exists. Or not a absence deduction, but definitely a gimmick deduction. And yeah, just bits and pieces lacking for color correction. Again, a modern kit would probably do better with some of these simple black places, either with deeper crevices so that light would not reflect, or really a underneath part that would cover the color, or just stickers. Really, you just really need stickers for these places. I probably still would paint in instead of using the stickers, but the lack of the stickers in the first place is definitely the kit's fault isn't the right words, of the kit's absence. In summary, in style, being Katoki's own design, he definitely did a great job to realizing his design without sacrificing the GM Type C's looks as it did in the anime. So it gets a solid 8, and I only limited the style ranking to A because either cost saving or other reasons that Katoki designs to chip out on some of the parts. I guess it is not, it is authentic for a mass-produced mobile suit like the GM Type C to have some chipped out in style, but there are definitely places where too much effort is, like, I think a lot of effort could be spent on GM Type C or other GMs in the Stardust Memory lineup or 0083 lineup in general. So misplaced priorities is why the style of GM Type C is limited to an A. Action is simple. ABS joints are great. Using them to realize the field motor, I guess the field motor installations are great as well, but the fact is it's still using the ball joint for the thighs, and the thigh is still too long for the double knee joint to actually unleash their potential. And then the independent ankles, while it looks like it can go very far, it doesn't actually go very far. Not sure if it's a style limitation or just maybe Katoki doesn't want too much gapping in his model, but in some very dramatic actions you don't really see, what's behind. So I'm not sure. Either way, still great actions, but definitely not the S rank like the Zog or other newer model kits. Gimmick, the inclusion of the Hyper Bazooka is definitely great. The two position shield strap buckle is definitely a standard of HGUCs for years to come. Although this is not the first model to use this clamp, it is a staple that I think they should still use this today, honestly, just for more options. Like I said, Beam Saber have a slot to put on blades of your choice is great, but not having a blade in the kit is not. And yeah, like the grip is pleasant, but it's not usable, is not great for Gimmick. With all of that combined, it is only a very close to SA. Like, I think if the GM Type C have a beam saber blade or even straight beam saber, and if the grip is operable, I would give it a S, or detachable magazine. Like, any of those three could bring it to S, but nope. They opt to give GM Type C a bunch of hands, and a lot of them are right hands for holding weapons. No weapon holding left hand. I guess the biggest markdown is the no weapon holding left hand. For me. Not that dual wielding is super practical most of the time, but these are giant 80 meters tall machines handling two weapons that is pretty much single-handed weapons for human size shouldn't be a problem. In addition to a shield, even though this is quite a large shield, shouldn't be too hard to hold on to, a needle life or, a light weapon like the beam saber or a beam spray gun or, small SMG. Shouldn't be a problem, but it's not here, so A for Gimmick. And absence. Same goes for absence. Everything we just talked about before. I think the priority seems to be a bit misplaced, I guess. I will talk about that in Ver.Ka, but to me, not having the beam saber blade really hurts the absence department greater than the lack of a left hand for weapon holding. So it's an A. Like most of the things you see GM Type C do in an anime, they do provide. Even the hands, because GM Type C do get quite a bit of grapple scenes in the starter's memory, weird enough, but lack of beam saber is quite a letdown. So, verdict. The HGUC 1-144 GM Type C gets an A for style, an A for action, an A for gimmick, and A for absence. Straight A's means this is still a very good kit. Definitely one that you should grab. It's just like the special sauce that some other kits or even its brother kits would have. The GM Type C is actually kind of a retool, or at least share a lot of parts with the powered GM that hopefully we can take a look. I'm not sure, but that is definitely a great kit. But being reformatted to the more standard, more widespread GM Type C, I'm not sure where do they lost the plots and decided to make it dramatic representation of some scenes in the show, but not a standard GM Type C that you would expect the Earth Federation to feel on the battle in some other places. That being said, the decal stickers is definitely one of the well liked decal or sticker options within the community. I do think they're better than the basic foil stickers that you get. They are easier to work with compared to the Bandai water decals. So I guess this is a plus on that front. The lack of the beam saber blade and the lack of left hand isn't a big deal. You can definitely fix it with some other spare parts within the HGUC line, or even the option parts line now that they included the optional hands. But yeah, just minor things that they miss out on doing this kit. So once again, if you like GM, if you like Katoki stuff, if you want something like Ver.Ka but not quite master grade or 1 to 100, the GM Type C is a good option. Thanks for watching.